So this is my process to wash the motorhome. I'm not saying this is the only way to do this, but this is the way I do it. And I've had a bunch of collector cars, muscle cars, race cars, exotic cars. This is our second 45 footer, and I think I've learned quite a bit along the way. One thing I recommend is 100% spend the money and have your rig ceramic coated. There's a billion different products out there. Read up on all of them. I chose a 5-year product with SB3 coatings. I use a guy out of Sarver, Pennsylvania, Zach Davis, and his shop is called To The Limit Motorsports. Laura will put a link at the end of the video if you want to reach out to Zach. I use GSF Snow Foam from Cook Chemicals as my soap. I use a 2-bucket method. Soap in the one bucket, clean water in the other, and I double dip before I put the products back on the coach. I use a wool wash pad on a big long extension pole from Lowe's for painting. And then this is probably our 6th power washer because I'm cheap and I don't want to spend $1,000 on the right product, so I keep spending $250. This is Chemical Guys power washer. It's cheap Chinese shit. It falls apart after 3 months. It is what it is. And then I have an extension here so I can get closer for rinsing. I've got their Chemical Guys foam cannon, which I like this one the best. I've had a bunch of these. This seems to last pretty well. And then I use a pump sprayer for a pre-soak. I use this pH neutral SB3 general purpose soap, and I like to spray that in the crevices and in the areas like on the trailer hitch here. So I'll go ahead and do that, which I've already sprayed, and we'll wash this off. So what I'll do next is I'll start to foam the coach. I'll do one side at a time, the rear halfway through the front, and then the front half, the front of the coach, and I'll work my way around. I try to stay out of direct sunlight. We're kind of fighting time here. The coach is in the shade, that's why I've got it slammed up against the wall here. So I'll foam with non-filtered water, I'll agitate and wash with the sponge, and then I'll turn on my DI filtration system and rinse the coach. If you come over here, I'll show you what that is real quick. A bunch of different examples of these. This is called Spot Free Rinse is the name of the website. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Spoke to him a bunch of times on the phone, nice guy. But this is resin in here that filters the water, takes all the harsh chemicals out of the water, allows you to wash your coach without spotting. Nobody wants to dry these things. They're a giant pain in the ass. So these valves up here, right now everything's bypassed. I'm just running regular water through. When I soap and when I pre-treat, I don't filter the water. I only use my resin and the filtered water when I rinse. I change this resin once a year before we go back to Florida. I think a bag of resin is about $300. I tried to source it locally, didn't have any luck. I just went back through the website. But this thing is a game changer and a necessity. Depending on what part of the country you're in and how hard your water is, you can really go through these pretty quickly as far as the resin. But this seems to last us between Western Pennsylvania and South Florida. About once a year, I'll change the resin out. So that's the rinsing system and the DI filtration. So for the lower stuff, I like to wash by hand because that wool pad on the brush is kind of hard to get to some of the lower areas and get around. Things like brake lights and this toe setup. So we got one side done, and then I'll rinse this. Again, pre-treating. I've got these wheels coated with aluminum wheels are coated with a product called Shark Fin, which I believe is on Zach's website too. I'm not sure who makes that stuff, but I just try to spray some of the problem areas with this soap This rub rail here likes to hold on to a lot of dirt. So I'll spray this too. And then the TV door and around the steps. I usually try to just do one side at a time, so I'll stop right here at this front corner and I'll do the front part of the truck all as one. First thing I do is rinse that off. Again, you don't want this stuff to sit on the paint long. Now I'll foam the side here. Everybody says work top down. That's more important for when you agitate and rinse. Just get the foam on the side of the rig. You'll see it's got a pretty nice bead. That IGL or SB3, I'm sorry, I use SB3 on this one. That stuff really beads up nice. You can see there's still quite a bit of protection on here, and we're about a year into this 5-year treatment. So I'll foam it now. It's gonna be a little tight in here with this wall, but we'll get it done. You can see the soap kind of pulls all the dirt to the ground. I'm not super thorough with the sponge because this thing has so much treatment on it, and the soap's kind of working for me as well, pulling the dirt off, so you can be a little more cavalier. You just want to try to agitate it. Also, don't take big bites. You know, stop at a certain spot and rinse. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, especially when you're dealing with the sun. As Laura will tell you, I keep a pretty fast pace when I'm doing this, but I'm always in a hurry with everything I do. I try to keep moving as fast as I can, and I do this whole bottom part by hand, just because, again, it's easier to get a hand net in here. And the last thing I do is kind of the area way up above the awnings, because quite frankly, it's a giant pain in the ass. So I try to do the front surface of the awning, then I'll run it down the underside, slide topper. This is sort of a pain. And then on the classics, you've got this space above, which I kind of get lazy up here, but there's really not much you can do unless you want to climb the ladder. Pre-treating the front face of this surface here is extremely important because this is where all the bugs land. So I really try to soak the cab down pretty good. All these areas here, there's a spider for my wife. Front face of the mirror, anywhere where there's a ton of bugs. Tires and the wheels. And then I like to get underneath here on the frame, the leaf springs, some of the turbo parts. You want to be careful under the hood with what you're spraying. Some of those components are sort of delicate, so I do that sparingly, but the front of the coach, I do that about 100 times a year. Sometimes my head bleeds. Sometimes we have to go to the hospital. That's probably the worst part of this whole process is I hit my head about 5 times. Again, all of these plugs need pre-treated or you'll be out here for hours. And what's nice is once you coat with ceramic, this shit just falls right off. I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself here. I've probably done a little too much because now we're fighting the sun. But just to be consistent with the other side, I'll do the same. I'm going to stop right about there. You quickly appreciate is this ceramic coating. If it's done right, this stuff literally just comes right off. You'll spend hours getting these bugs off the front. Yep. So I'm going to finish pre-treating just so we get to the same spot we are on the other side. I was getting a little ahead of myself and the sun was starting to dry some of the soap, so I'm just going to catch up here. And then I'm going to climb up on the motor. Not condoning this, it's sort of dangerous, but there's really no other way to get to the cap over the front windshield and the visor. One of the last things I'll do is I'll open up this generator compartment and I'll really soak down this whole compartment in here. This thing lives in a really dirty environment. When you're going down the road with grime, and you want to try to keep this clean until they come up with a better solution. You know, this thing lives back here and it's kind of exposed to all the elements, so I always clean this compartment too. So the final thing I like to do when it's inside is I'll take a microfiber and I'll just dry the front end and all these chrome pieces just to make sure there's no spotting. Even though this DI system does a pretty good job, I just like to go over it myself. So I'll dry the front end here, just the chrome, and then I'll go around and do the wheels last.